Everybody, welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 163. Back for a Week 12 recap. Had a pretty crazy weekend in the SEC. Obviously, a lot of news going on right now. A hot topic of the last really couple weeks, but particularly in the last 48 hours or so is Lane Kiffin and the reports of his family looking into Baton Rouge and Gainesville a little bit. It's almost as if we talked about this several weeks ago. Might have had some comments in the chat saying we, might not know what we were talking about, but it seems to me that it's coming right on time. Jimmy Sexton is just the agent for Lane Kiffin and many others in college football. Could be a leverage play. He could really go one of these places. I don't think anything would surprise me at this point with the way this is going. Just almost an unprecedented situation, I feel like, to this magnitude going on with a team that's having a historic season by their standards, in Ole Miss that's very likely going to be in the college football playoff, pretty much a lock at this point. Mm-hmm. And then you've got these rumors going on. But I've been dying to get your thoughts about this situation. I mean, who needs to watch soap operas on TV when you can just tune into SEC football?
Yeah, 100%. We were texting, over the weekend and the last few days. How can anybody not love college football is what I have to say, because not only are the games and every Saturday night and Saturday as in general just perfect and just you can't script things better than what happens, but then the behind the scenes stuff is sometimes almost even more entertaining than what we get on Saturdays. And obviously, anytime Lane Kiffin's involved, it's super entertaining just because of the personality that he is. But with all of this going on, there's been rumors and talks about this potentially happening. Really before Brian Kelly even got fired, we were talking about it like 2 weeks before Brian Kelly got fired. You could just hear the rumblings. Billy Napier had just been let go. Those are two blue blood programs in college football, especially in the conference. But then you look at Ole Miss and where he's at now and what he's done the last 6-7 years there and what he's built. He's built really a powerhouse. They've won 10-plus games 3 years in a row. Had never been done before he got there. They're on a roll. He recruits really well, mainly out of the portal. He's got his system going that he likes. It's much different than majority of other college football programs, especially in the SEC. Not that other programs don't have fun, but the way that the things that they do. I mean, you saw a video come out last week. They're playing baseball or stickball on the football field during game week. I mean, they're just having a blast. They got the basketball goal on the sidelines. They talk about he talks about prior this year before the season started. He talked about the things they incorporate, just competition in everything, not even just in practice, but in everything. So it just makes it fun, makes guys want to be there. You can see how he gets the great talent, and you can see how the guys want to play for him. Now, when you look at this situation that's going on and him flirting with other programs, that's nothing to be shocked if you know Lane Kiffin and you know anything about him and his track record. He definitely likes himself. I'm not calling him full of himself or arrogant or anything, but he likes attention on himself. He's not shy of no attention by any means. But you've got arguably the best job in college football open in LSU. You can make real arguments that it is the best job in college football. Top 5 without a doubt. Florida's not too far behind it. Just said a little bit ago that it is one of the blue blood programs in college football. But with the way college football is built now, you can win anywhere with NIL. As long as you have the resources for NIL, you can win anywhere. And he's proven that doing that at Ole Miss the way that he's done it. I can understand why Ole Miss fans are so frustrated and fed up with him because it hasn't been reported that officially by anybody for a fact that they have offered Lane Kiffin an extension. But with what he's done there, he's the best coach they've ever had in program history. You've got to assume that they've already offered him an extension, and he hasn't taken it yet. Now, has Lane Kiffin seen the extension in front of his face? Probably not, because he's got a lot going on, but Jimmy Sexton's definitely seen it. It's got to be out there. But also, you got Florida and LSU reportedly offering him $13, $14, $15 million a year over 10 years, so $150 million contract. That's unheard. I mean, that's more than Kirby Smart makes. That's more than Nick Saban ever made. I mean, he would be the highest paid coach in college football, which would Kirby's praying that he takes one of these jobs because then in his contract that he gets a raise, he's got to be within a percentage of the highest paid or whatever it is. So, he's praying for it. But I can understand Lane leaving, but also I kind of scratch my head a little bit because LSU, I feel like you could get there next year. He could go to the college football playoff because of the program it is. I feel like Florida, you could get there in 2 years. Both of those programs are better than LSU when Kiffin took over Ole Miss. But what he's got built at Ole Miss now is definitely better, in my opinion, than LSU and Florida. Now, the resources are probably better at LSU and Florida, and you can't fault the guy for at least entertaining it. But also, you got to feel for the fans and Ole Miss as a whole because they've given him everything that he's ever wanted, everything he's ever asked. He asked him to jump. They say, how high, Lane? How high do we need to jump? They give him every single thing he's ever asked for, and he's just leading them along, it seems. Now, if he does take another job or if he takes too long to sign the extension that isn't official but everybody knows that he's got an extension offered, there's talks that Ole Miss is going to kick him out of the door before the playoffs start, maybe after the Egg Bowl. Not unprecedented territory. We've seen this happen with Lane Kiffin in the 2016 season. I feel like a big reason that Alabama didn't perform well in that national championship game was because Lane Kiffin was canned between the semifinals and the championship game, and you had to get Sarkisian promoted in a quick time frame to be promoted to offensive coordinator. It's just different. I think that was a huge reason of the outcome of that game for Alabama. So it's happened before. He hasn't really left many places in good graces outside of probably FAU. So it's not unprecedented territory for him, but I can understand why they wouldn't want him there. But at the same time, do you really want to punish the team and take Lane Kiffin off the sidelines, which is, in my opinion, the only way Ole Miss is going to make a deep run? Not saying it's the only way they're going to get to the playoffs. They're already in there. They're in there. But to make a deep run to the playoffs or in the playoffs, I think Ole Miss's best chance to do that is with Lane Kiffin on the sidelines. So are you going to light a match to your season and your team in the locker room because you're mad at your head coach? Now people can turn that around and say, well, Lane Kiffin lit the match and dropped it in the locker room and burned up the whole season himself. I think he's going to stay. He wants to stay through the year, whether he takes another job or not. But if he takes another job before the playoffs start or before the playoffs are over and they're still playing, there's no way that they're going to allow him to be on the sidelines. I understand it. I don't agree with it. I get it. It's in conference, and people are making the argument, well, you don't want to give him extra time to recruit these players. By God, these kids enter the transfer portal left and right. They know whether he's going or he's not going, whether he leaves before the playoff, after the Egg Bowl, during the playoffs, after the national championship game, whenever he leaves, he can get those guys if he wants to get those guys. They act like he don't have their phone number. Like, I just, that argument to me, I don't get it, because if you're saying, well, you don't want him to be poaching off your roster, he's going to do that anyway if he leaves, regardless of when he leaves. So I've got mixed feelings on this. I think Ole Miss should, I know it's tough to say, but swallow your pride and hope that your best season in school history ends in a national championship. Whether your coach stays or goes, your best chance you got to finish it off, hoisting the trophy, is with him on the sidelines. If he's gone, I don't know that Ole Miss wins a game in the playoffs. I am excited to hear your opinion on that, though.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, definitely their best situation is having him finish the season, regardless of whether he stays or goes. There's, I guess, one thing I am for sure of is that whether he stays or he takes another job, like, he probably is going to be the highest paid coach in the country when all the dust settles here. Like I said, this is just a crazy scenario with this. And like I said, too, there are so many, after what Jimmy Sexton pulled after Saban's retirement, I'm not ruling out that this is just him pulling strings behind the scenes. That would not surprise me one bit. Like, if he signed an extension to stay in Oxford tonight or tomorrow as we're on here, would not surprise me one bit.
Right.
And I also told you the same thing too. If he took either one of these jobs, I wouldn't be shocked with that either. Like, I don't think any of the three outcomes would surprise me at this point. But as far as him finishing the season, I totally agree they need him on the sidelines. I don't think it's the right thing. I get your point too, and I agree that I get their point of being frustrated and Ole Miss wanting clarity. Okay, are you with us? Are you going to be leaving? Like, this is kind of a dark cloud hanging over us to end this season. We're having the best season we've ever had. So I get it from their point too, but at the same time, like you said, you kind of have to swallow your pride and be like, okay, whether you stay or go, we need you on the sidelines to finish this year because, like I said, that's our best team, and that's going to give us the best chance to possibly to have a chance to go all the way this year. So I agree with that. It is just such a unique, situation here. I do want to ask, kind of before we get into some recaps of the games, as of tonight, this is November 18th, what is your prediction? And I do think we're going to have an answer on this pretty soon, maybe by the next time we record. But what's your prediction as of tonight? Does he stay? Does he go to LSU? Does he go to Florida? What would you think if you had to put money on it right now?
If I had to put money on it right now, I don't know which school, but I don't think he stays at Ole Miss. Now, 3 weeks ago you asked me this question. I'm putting all my money in the bank that he is going to stay at Ole Miss. I get him entertaining the job and entertaining both Florida and LSU, but in my opinion, you don't send your wife, you don't send your family members, you don't send one of your coaches who's also your brother and his wife and his kids to Gainesville and Baton Rouge to check out the cities and the schools and all that if you're not really interested in taking it. If it's just a ploy to potentially get Ole Miss to give him a little more money and doing some, like you said, Jimmy Sexton pulling some strings behind the scenes, if it is that, I don't know that he goes to this extent to send family members across the country and go check out other campuses and other high schools in the city around it. That's what makes me think, okay, he might be leaving, because we've heard him say, Ole Miss I needed Ole Miss more than it needed me. You know how he's so happy there. It's the best thing that's ever happened to him. His family loves it. That Ole Miss was in this situation in 2022 and he was flirting back and forth with the Auburn job, and then he decided to stay. So this is not the first time this has happened. But to me, if he really wanted to be at Ole Miss the way he says he is, he would have already signed the extension. We just saw Mike Elko do it. Cut out all the distractions. Not that he was going anywhere, but he said, I don't want to worry about a contract extension in the middle of the season. Give it to me. Let me sign it. Let me move on down the road. I got a championship to worry about. I feel like Lane would be the same way. If you really want to be at Ole Miss, tell him, bring the papers into my office. Let me sign it and nip this in the bud, because he keeps talking about, I don't want to talk about this. It's disrespectful to my team to keep talking about this with how well they played today. That's what he said after the Florida game this weekend. He said, I don't want to talk about this because it's disrespectful to my team. I love it here. I love what we're doing. I get all that, Lane. I'm with you 100%. You don't want to take distractions and worry about a contract when you're in the middle of a really good season. But if you really didn't want to worry about all that, you'd sign the damn contract and move on. So for that reason, I don't think he's in Oxford next year. I think he's either in Gainesville or Baton Rouge. Couldn't tell you which one. I think both of them are a really good job, whichever he decides to go. But that's the reason I think he's not in Oxford, because he hasn't signed an extension yet. I know it hasn't been officially reported that he's got one, but be real, guys. He has an extension sitting there waiting on him to sign it, and he hadn't done it yet.
Well, we talked about, too, we hadn't talked about on this podcast specifically because it just happened, but like I said, Elko that wasn't even one, there was some talks about Penn State, but it's like he was never going anywhere. It's like they did that one, and it wasn't really even necessary. They could have this ironed out in 24 to 48 hours and nip this whole situation in the bud if they want to. That's why I think he's leaving as well. That's just my.
Where do you think he's going?
I don't have intel. I think he's going to Florida. If I just had to put money on it right now, that would be my pick as of tonight. I just feel like that's kind of where the most smoke is a little bit to me. And the reason I think he's leaving, too, is just because this isn't the first time he's flirted with leaving there. I mean, he was literally bags packed, headed over here to Auburn, Alabama, and as we well know at this point, Lane Kiffin tank that deal, and you probably have Landry on your terrorist watch list at this
100%.
point. I mean, she's probably number one, number two. Maybe her and Jay Jacobs are duking it out for number one spot there. But anyway,
she's getting lots of birds if she steps foot in Lee County. She's going to get birds galore in Lee County.
So exactly, and that's why I think too. It's like it's not the first time he is. Now I know he's had a ton of success since then. Like obviously they've got to historic levels of success there in Ole Miss the last couple of years. So I know circumstances have changed a little bit since then. But it does make you wonder, and just with all this smoke, like you said, it's like I understand the leverage play, and probably I think it would be more Jimmy Sexton trying to get the most money he can, more so than Lane Kiffin, because at this point, whether it's 13 or 14 million a year, I don't think that really makes that much difference at this point. For maybe Jimmy Sexton, I'm sure it does, but so I get it maybe from that, but I just feel like there's too much smoke, like you said. I think we'll find out in the next couple of days. I think if we don't hear any news of an extension by, let's just say, Saturday of this week, they're on a bye week. I think if he's going to stay in Ole Miss, I feel like we'll know in the next handful of days, in my opinion. Because like you said, it's like, if you're going to and you're for sure locked in with it, why not just nip this in the bud? That way your team is not worried about this. It is an immediate story. You don't have to worry about it anymore. It would be better for all parties. That's why I'm leaning towards him leaving. And I would say Florida right now, but I don't really know. That just is a gut feeling for me. But it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out over the next week or two. Like I said, I feel like from all accounts and what's being reported, it sounds like we should know something relatively quickly, at least whether he's staying or going. Now, which job it is may be a little longer, but I'm very fascinated to see how this plays out because, to have this all going on and all these coaching searches going on during the middle of conference championship and playoff races, it's truly unprecedented times we're seeing.
100%. And like we covered at the beginning of this podcast, whether he stays or goes, I think that he should stay on the sidelines for Ole Miss and coach them until their season ends. But you can guarantee if it comes out that he is not going to stay at Ole Miss, he will not be on the sidelines anymore after that. He won't be. Their season's not going to end the way that it should. Not saying that they should hoist a national championship, but they should win one or two playoff games, in my opinion. They will if he's on the sideline. But he should stay. He should be able to finish and coach out the season. But if he decides to not stay in Oxford, Ole Miss is not going to allow that, and it's just going to tarnish the whole season, in my opinion. But it is what it is. We're going to find out, and like you said, I'm excited because if he does leave, that opens up the Ole Miss job. Well, then, bam, there's another coaching search that's got to happen. So there's a bunch of dominoes that are going to fall regardless of what happens here, because if he stays there, well, then both LSU and Florida both have to pivot and go to their option Bs. So it just a lot of dominoes are going to fall.
Yeah, so much is going to flow downstream of this decision. It's kind of like in the NFL, especially in baseball. Mm-hmm. In baseball free agency, you may have one big free agent, like, for example, Shohei Ohtani a couple years ago. He was the big fish, and it's like once that decision was made, the whole offseason picked up. It's like everything was on halt until that one decision was made. That's exactly how I view this. It's like until Lane and that decision's made and that's settled, it feels like almost – now, again, James Franklin just got the Virginia Tech job. We were going to touch on that a little bit. Felt like that was kind of a separate scenario, but there's so many other jobs that's going to flow downstream of what Lane decides. So I think once that's made, then you'll really see this start to pick up. And two, as seasons are kind of coming to an end. But, yeah, you made a great point. As decision's made, it's just going to have a huge domino and ripple effect through the rest of the SEC and the rest of college football.
Yes, and we've talked about that for weeks. That's going to be the most fun part of it. This is already fun, but the like you said, the decisions that flow downstream are going to be even more fun, in my opinion, because those are schools that were not necessarily expecting it and not looking to fire their coach, and they're still having to be in the same boat as schools that just fired their coach, like the 15 of them that's already fired their coach this year. And speaking of, we'll get past this quick. We know it's not SEC Cam just touched on it. James Franklin going to Virginia Tech. Absolute home run hire by Virginia Tech. He can do the exact same thing he did at Penn State, maybe a game worse every year. He'll have a statue out there by Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech. If he just repeats what he did at Penn State, he'll coach there until he decides to leave.
No, I agree. I think this is a home run hire for Virginia Tech. I think they're coming out on the better end of this deal than he is. Now, and Virginia Tech's a really good program. I thought there was a chance he would get one of these other jobs. I think, honestly think if he wanted the Arkansas job, he would be at Arkansas already. I mean, there was a lot of rumors of him. It seemed like this was a job he wanted over that one. And they've made commitments to him that they're going to spend at the top of the ACC to provide him one of the best, rosters in that conference to be able to compete at the highest level and ultimately win that conference and be in the college football playoffs. So obviously he liked what he heard and what they were able to offer him and provide. So I love this hire from their perspective. I think it's absolutely the best coach they could have gotten in this cycle. And like I said, I think, like I said, with him, I just feel like the floor is really high with him. Like, obviously the ceiling didn't ultimately end up being what Penn State hoped, and I'm sure what he hoped. He was hoping he could get over the hump and win a national title. But with him, like, you're probably not going to bottom out very much. Like, your floor is going to be very high, and you're going to be a consistently solid program, and I think he can deliver that there. So, yeah, love the hire from them. Think he'll do a solid job there. But there was a lot of smoke recently there, so I wasn't surprised. But I thought at the outset of these coaching searches, I thought he very easily could find himself back in the SEC, but ultimately he liked, what he got there, and I think he'll do a really good job.
And you just touched on it. College football playoff rankings came out just a little bit ago before we started recording. I want to get your thoughts. Most of the top teams have pretty much stayed the same. Not a whole lot of movement in the top 5 or 6. But Alabama, they did lose to Oklahoma, who is ranked. Falls behind Notre Dame. Have a way better strength of schedule than Notre Dame. Lost to better teams outside of Florida State. They have 2 losses. One loss came to a ranked team, and they fall behind Notre Dame. Notre Dame lost at home, obviously, to the number 3 team in the nation, and they lost to Miami, who is kind of fallen off from the first 5-6 weeks of the season, what everybody thought they were going to be. I can't make it make sense. Again, I've said this on the podcast 1,000 times. Rankings do not matter in week 9, 10, 11, because if you handle your business, you're going to be there. Alabama wins out, doesn't matter what they're ranked, they're going to be in there. Whether they're behind Notre Dame or in front of them, they're going to be there, so it doesn't really matter. But I do think that it is a little egregious that Notre Dame jumped Alabama in the latest CFP rankings. I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it is a little frustrating just because you heard all season that strength of schedule was going to be a much bigger factor and a much bigger metric, and it just with that decision doesn't really seem to be the case. Now, like I said, obviously Alabama has the worst loss of both those teams, obviously losing to Florida State. They lost to Oklahoma, who's ranked 8th. Obviously, Notre Dame lost to A&M and Miami, who are 3rd and 14th, respectively.
But then who have they beat? That's the question. Who have they beat?
They have 1 ranked win against USC, but Alabama has 4 ranked wins in the committee's current top 25. So it's like, basically you're telling me you're more worried about having quality losses more than quality wins. You know what I mean? That's what that's telling me. I agree with that. To me, it's like, okay, I think it's good to have quality. Like, you don't want to lose just to all bad teams. Like, obviously it doesn't matter, but it's like who you beat should matter a little bit more when you've beaten. I mean, nobody has a better win than Alabama going to Athens and beating Georgia. Right. That is looking better by the minute, by the week of Georgia playing, and we'll get into their win here in a little bit. But it's like very few teams could have pulled that off. Like, regardless of what you think of Alabama, nobody knows how their season will end whether it ends in the Iron Bowl or whether it ends somewhere in the college football playoff. Nobody knows, but I guarantee you there's very few teams in the country that could have pulled that off. You could probably count them on 2 or 3 fingers, to be honest with you, who could go into Athens and beat them. So it's like, that to me should weigh a lot. I don't think that probably weighed heavily enough. Apparently it didn't. But, I mean, the rest of it, I mean, I think, was about like I thought. Everybody moved up a spot. Obviously, Alabama dropped below, all the one-loss teams, which I totally expected there. But, I didn't really get that. But at the end of the day, like you said, if you go handle business, if they win the Iron Bowl, they'll likely be in the SEC championship, and then they win that, it'll be a moot point anyway. So, like I said, you handle business, it'll ultimately work out in the end.
I agree with that. Now, moving into recaps of this week's game, the game that was supposed to be the most exciting, best game of the weekend, Georgia and Texas, turns out to be an absolute, just not a dud, because it was a fun game, especially if you're a Georgia fan, but it did not live up to the billing that everyone expected it to. Georgia just flat out dominated Texas. Now, Texas's first drive, 13 plays, ends in a field goal. You're like, all right, this might be a nice little football game we got going on here. And after that, Georgia scores their first 2 drives, kind of slow, trading punts back and forth in the middle of the game, and then like we've seen several times, Georgia just dominates the second half. I thought it was a great call there. Obviously, Kirby said after the game, if we don't get that onside kick, every one of you here is calling me an idiot. Now, I agree with that for sure, but I thought it was a great call to go out there. You're up 21-0. You got a 2-possession lead. You go get the ball back. You drive down, score again, and you really put the nail in the coffin there. Georgia got after Arch Manning all night. Not necessarily getting sacks. I think they had 3 sacks, so they didn't bring him down a lot, but they had pressure. Texas couldn't run the football. They haven't really ran the football extremely well all year, which is strange for a Sarkisian team. Sarkisian teams are known for running the football. But in the past, Josh Pate put it out right after the game. Georgia and Texas have played 3 times in the last year. In the last 365 days, they played 3 times. Texas has 83 total rushing yards in all 3 of those games. That is unheard of for a Steve Sarkisian team. Even a Steve Sarkisian team that struggles running the football. I mean, Texas ran the ball for 100 yards against Vandy, and they still struggled to run the football that game, but they still got 100 yards rushing. They could do nothing in this game. Kirby talked about it after the game. They just out-physicaled them, man. Georgia goes down to the red zone 4 times, comes away with 4 touchdowns. Texas goes to the red zone 3 times, comes away with a touchdown and a field goal. Georgia found a way to get it done. Gunnar Stockton, in my opinion, should definitely be in the Heisman conversation. Don't know that he'll win it. I think that he's better than Mendoza, but what Mendoza's done this year at a school like Indiana, not historically great, and he's taking them to new heights. They're probably going to make a run in the playoff if I had to guess. Mendoza's probably the number 1 guy right now. Probably is going to end up winning it if things play out like everybody expects. But Gunnar Stockton, man, we talked about him a couple weeks ago. I said everybody told me that he wasn't going to be as good as he needed to be. He wasn't the answer for the Georgia program. He wasn't going to get Georgia back to the mountaintop. And by God, he's put a middle finger in the face of all those people, and he's proven them wrong every single week. Throws 1 interception later in the game, but really it didn't matter when he threw that interception. They had such a big lead that it didn't really hurt them. I just thought that Georgia, like Kirby said, was the more physical team. You could tell it from the first snap to the final snap. They wanted it more. He said a lot of players these days want to check. That ain't what we're about here at Georgia. We're about physical. We're going to out-physical you, and we're going to get a check. But our number 1 thing on our mind is not money. It is going out there and beating your ass, play in and play out, and that's exactly what they did for really the 7th, 8th week in a row. Since the Alabama game, nobody's really been able to be on the field with them. They've had some close games, but the scoreboard doesn't really dictate how those games played out. They had a close game with Florida, won by 4, but really dominated Florida the whole game. This Georgia team is playing their best ball right now. No surprise. Kirby is always he gets better and better. His teams get better and better each week. They're finally starting the last 4 or 5 weeks. They've started out the gate hot. Early in the season, when we would get on here and talk about Georgia, we'd say, man, they just start so slow. We said it's going to eventually come back and bite them. Well, Kirby nipped that in the bud, and he figured it out. They've come out the gate the last 3 or 4 weeks and come out and got a touchdown in their first or second drive. And then obviously in the third and fourth quarter, Kirby is better. Georgia's teams are always going to be better in the third and fourth quarter. He's the best second half coach in college football. He's the best in-game adjustment coach in college football. So when you come out the gate hot, and then you know that you're automatically know that you're going to finish hot, it's a recipe for success. This game reminded me a lot of the was that 2022 national championship game against TCU, where it was a lot of hype around the game. Oh, TCU beat Michigan. They stunned Michigan. Can they do it again? And they just get absolutely skull-drugged by Georgia up and down the field. This game never felt close. This game never felt close at all. Defensively, Georgia was wreaking havoc on Texas all game. Like I said, couldn't run the football and made Arch uncomfortable all night. Arch made some good throws. He's playing a lot better ball than he was in the first half of the season. But still, it was not enough to conquer this Georgia team. They've taken on the identity of their coach. And as much as I don't like Georgia being an Auburn fan, they are so much fun to watch, dude. This is probably, outside of Auburn, my favorite team to watch is Georgia.
Yeah, and it really just goes to show how well they dominated and how they played in the fourth quarter. Because, I mean, it was late third quarter. It was a 14-10 ball game. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, it was crazy how great they dominated the fourth quarter because they scored late in the third to make it 21-10. Obviously had the onside kick, was able to drive it right back down and score, make it 28-10. Obviously, at that point, it was all she wrote. But, man, like you said, they limited explosive plays. Limited rushing yards, 23 rushing yards. I think Texas only had one play of over 20 yards. And the biggest thing for me is what we talked all year about is how Georgia's kind of lack of pass rush, which was, something that was a little unusual for them, and how other teams were getting after the quarterback more than they were able to. And, with this Texas team, like you would have thought coming in the game, like, yeah, Texas is going to be able to get after Gunnar Stockton more than Georgia's going to be able to get after Arch Manning. I know Texas has had their struggles on the offensive line, but this hasn't been a great pass rushing team, and they were able to flip that in their favor. They were able to run the ball much better than Texas did. I mean, they didn't run it great. I think they had 120-something yards rushing, but when you hold the other team to 20, you outrush them by 100 yards, that's a pretty good difference. And then obviously Gunnar Stockton, man, he's just upward ascension mode for him, man. He's played outstanding. I felt like the faster starts too, ever since that Ole Miss game where they got in a track meet and literally scored every possession. I feel like their starts have gotten a lot better since that game. It feels like they've kind of figured that out. And when you get in a game like that where everybody scores the first 10 possessions of the game, I guess you kind of have to get your engine started a little bit quicker. And they've been doing a better job of that here lately. And like you said, they're rounding into form at just the right time, like they always do. I mean, they're always a second half team, not only in games but in the season in particular as well. So yeah, I love the way they're playing right now. They're going to be a handful going into the college football playoff, regardless how the SEC championship scenario kind of works out. But yeah, they're going to be a tough out for anybody, and right now would be one of, if not my favorite, maybe depending on how the bracket works out, to win the whole thing. I love the way they're playing right now.
I agree. Moving on to teams that have no shot of making the college football playoffs. A team I was high on last week that I took them plus 5.5. It hit, and you talked me in. You're like, damn it, man, you want to take the Razorbacks? Take the Razorbacks money line. I took it. I said they had a great chance to win this game, and by God, if they didn't beat themselves again. This Arkansas team finds a way to beat themselves more than any team I've ever seen, more than Auburn by a landslide. I mean, they had Auburn beat and found a way to lose that game. This Arkansas team just cannot get out of their own way. Turned the ball over 3 times. You hit a big play. You get down there inside the 10. 2 plays later, you throw a pick in the end zone. Had a chance to go up there. You miss a field goal late to take a lead. It played out about as I expected. Neither team just dominating, but Arkansas, in my opinion, had their several opportunities to win this game. I mean, fumbling on one of their first or their second drive, just a miss, a bad handoff. I mean, just could not get out of their own way. Again, had a lot of penalties, but LSU, they had 6 penalties for 70-something yards. LSU had 7 penalties for 70-something yards, so those kind of washed out. The turnovers were the issue for Arkansas. Time of possession for LSU was much larger. LSU was better on first downs. They had I think Arkansas had 17 first downs. LSU had 21. They had more passing yards. They won the turnover battle, and they dominated time of possession. They had the ball like 12 more minutes than Arkansas did, and they came away with points when they had the chance to. Arkansas, like I said, they got stuffed on 4th and goal. They could not find a way to win. That is got to be the most frustrated fan base this season in the SEC. Has got to be Arkansas, because they're in every single ball game. They really haven't been boat raced this year, maybe one game, but they've been in every single ball game. I think they have 7 or 8 one-possession losses, and it's just because they've given it to the other team. They've served it to them on a silver platter. That pick in the end zone, man, you could just feel. I know it wasn't the end of the game, and I think it was the end of the second or third quarter whenever it happened. I can't remember exactly when it happened, but that pick in the end zone right after the big play to get inside the 10, it just felt like the air came out of that Arkansas team, man. It's just like they had a chance to really take hold of it. I mean, they were up 14-0 to start the game, and they let LSU come back, but they had a chance to really blow the game open and take full control. They just couldn't find a way to do it. And that's got to be the most frustrating thing about this Arkansas team this year.
Now, you highlighted it perfectly. We talked about last week in the recap of their game against Mississippi State who was going to close that game, because both teams were kind of finding ways to lose. Obviously, State ended up winning that game late. They came back late. Like Arkansas was double digits late in that game. Again, in this one, man, nobody loves turnovers like this Arkansas team does. I don't know what their turnover margin is exactly, but it can't be very good. Like you said, 3 costly turnovers in this game. That was the theme this weekend. If you lose the turnover battle 3-0, you're not going to win. But you highlighted perfectly, though. They've literally been in every game. The only game they got their doors absolutely blown off was that Notre Dame game.
Notre Dame, yeah.
Outside of that, literally, Week 3, 6-point loss to Ole Miss, 1-point loss to Memphis, 3-point loss to Tennessee. All those were away from home, too. So, I mean, all single-digit losses away from home inside a touchdown or field goal. 3-point loss to A&M. They lost by 9 to Auburn. They lost by 3 to Mississippi State and lost by 1 to LSU. That's how close they've been, man. I mean, it is insane to lose that many one-possession game and, like, field goal, like 1-point loss, multiple 3-point losses. Let's say, they've had 2 1-point losses and 3 3-point losses. I mean, that is crazy, dude. And then, a 6-point and a 9-point loss. So it's insane. Yeah. Other than that Notre Dame game, they've literally been in position or had a chance to win every other game they've been in and can't win any of them.
And it's not like the other team just edges them out. They literally hand it to the other team or throw it to the other team. Like they literally give it away. It's not like the other team just finds a way and it's just a slugfest and the other team just squeaks out a win. It's literally Arkansas has the advantage and they're just like, nah, I don't think we want to win this game. Here you go. That's what all of them are.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping better times are ahead for Arkansas. We'll see what happens in their coaching search, but it's tough go there and a lot of close losses, which was a theme under Sam Pittman a lot. But it feels like, man, even now this year in particular, it's been just even more than that. So hopefully better times are ahead for Arkansas here. But I got to get into this Alabama-Oklahoma game. Obviously, Oklahoma with a monumental win for their playoff hopes. One of the biggest, certainly the biggest win of the season for them.
Oh, yeah.
Put themselves right squarely in the playoff mix. We talked about last week in the preview of this game, Oklahoma, one of the worst teams in the SEC in turnover margin. Alabama, one of the best in turnover margin. that totally inverted itself in this game. That was the recipe that Oklahoma needed. That was the script they were going to have to win this game. That was kind of the best path, I guess you could say, for them to win this game, because this never felt like a game where either offense was necessarily going to move it down the field and put a bunch of points on the board. I didn't think Oklahoma's offense would be able to drive it consistently. Alabama's offense, even with the turnovers, was able to drive it pretty good. But again, if you don't cash in on it, it doesn't, it's just a bunch of empty yards at the end of the day. And that's kind of what we saw. I thought, obviously, the pick six was a huge play in this game early on, gave Oklahoma a 10-point lead early. You had kind of a play that got lost in it. The early punt return for Oklahoma, you had a missed tackle. Latsier Brooks was in position, missed a tackle, led to about a 50-yard punt return for Oklahoma, set up their first field goal. That was kind of a small play in the grand scheme of it, but certainly one nonetheless. Then obviously the fifth straight game for Alabama, they've had a strip sack. That's been a concern for me, and obviously that kind of played itself out again. And then Oklahoma just completely dominated special teams in this game. Alabama was absolutely atrocious in all phases of special teams, from snapping of field goals to actually kicking field goals to actually covering punts. And then meanwhile, on the other side, you have Oklahoma getting good punt returns. Tate Sandell and his short shorts are bombing kicks from Northport. Just left and right. I mean, this dude is unbelievable, by the way. 7 of 7 from 50-plus this year. I mean, we knew he was really good, but that's the first time, man, like, getting to see it against my team was unfortunate. But, I mean, I knew how good he was, so I wasn't shocked at all. But, man, he is super impressive. So they dominated that aspect of the game. Like I said, I mean, it was really, at the end of the day, it was you lose the turnover battle 3-0. Alabama was pretty much a 2-1 yardage edge. I mean, they had 403 yards of offense to 212, I believe.
Yeah.
But again, neither team ran the ball great, which again wasn't a surprise. Neither teams ran it particularly well. But yeah, it came down to Alabama's turnovers, Alabama's mistakes. But I don't want that to take any credit away from Oklahoma, because they were absolutely hunting the football in this game. They forced them. They should get all the credit for that. And they were able to invert that turnover margin stat. And ultimately, like I said, it was enough in the end to come out of Tuscaloosa with a huge win. And like I said, a monumental win for their playoff hopes and putting them in prime position to be in the college football playoff.
Yeah, Oklahoma, they found a way to manufacture some turnovers. Going into the Tennessee game, up to that point, they had 4 turnovers on the season. In the Tennessee game and in the Alabama game, they forced 3 turnovers in both of them. So they more than doubled almost doubled their turnover margin on the season in 2 games. So, yes, 100% they did manufacture those. They forced those. Like you said, special teams really had a big part in this. Bama missing field goals. Like you said, Oklahoma banging every field goal that they attempted. You had the fumble from Ryan Williams on the punt return that set up a short yardage for an offensive touchdown for Oklahoma. Bama had more offensive touchdowns than Oklahoma did. Bama, like you said, dominated time possession. They dominated first downs. Oklahoma had 12 first downs. Bama had 23 first downs. Oklahoma was 3 of 13 on third downs. Bama was 5 of 13 on third downs. Oklahoma had 212 yards of total offense. Bama had 406 yards of total offense. Every category that usually you look at and say, yeah, that's why that team won the game, Bama won in, except for the one that's the big factor, and that's turnovers. Now, obviously, like you said, special teams had a huge part in this, but the turnovers, like you said, that's what I texted you right after the game ended. I said, man, you hit the nail on the head last podcast. You said the only way that Oklahoma is able to win this game is if they can force turnovers and have more turnovers than Alabama. And that is exactly the recipe that played out on Saturday. I mean, that is one of the biggest things. If you lose a turnover battle, more times than not, just like we were talking about, just ask Arkansas. More times than not, you're going to find a way to lose that game rather than win that game. So, like you said,
especially with this OU defense as well, man. They're so aggressive. And that, like I said, it was mistakes on Alabama's part, but they played a huge role in that. They were hunting the football, man, punching the ball out. Alabama was close to having some other, turnovers as well. You can't be loose with the football against this bunch, and you got to get the ball out of your hands when Brent Venables is dialing it up. So, yeah, they dominated special teams. Like I said, they forced enough turnovers and set their offense up with short fields, and they made the plays, and Alabama didn't. Like, Alabama was very close to forcing a couple turnovers of their own. They dropped probably a would-be pick six themselves, Nakai Hill-Green, or I believe it was Justin Jefferson, then Nakai Hill-Green had one where it was a tough play, but he was diving towards the ground, but it was almost an interception as well. So it's like Oklahoma made those plays, Alabama didn't. If Alabama makes one of those on defense, and I'm not blaming them because the defense played amazing, but, if they make one of those plays, like, the game probably flips. If you don't snap it 10 feet high and miss a field goal, then you might win that game. So, like I said, Alabama just made far too many mistakes, and Oklahoma did exactly what they needed to, and they capitalized, and they were a big reason in doing that, and it was a really, really impressive win for them.
Yes, and I want to get to the game that everybody's probably waiting on. If you're listening this far, sorry it's taking us this long to get to this game, but Texas A&M, South Carolina, man. Oh, my God, at the absolute collapse from South Carolina. Oh, my God, at the tale of two halves of this game. Marcel Reed, I feel like they cloned him and brought out a fake version of him in the first half, and they went and got the original version in the second half. He was a completely different quarterback in the second half than he was in the first half. Texas A&M as a whole, as a team, was a completely different team in the second half as they were in the first half. Same thing with South Carolina. South Carolina needed one score in the second half. A field goal, a safety, a touchdown, something. You needed to put points on the board one time in the second half, and it was pretty much all she wrote. It was going to be a way too big of a deficit for A&M to come back from. When A&M scored right out of halftime, me and you were texting, and you said, South Carolina has got to answer here, or it's going to be close. It's going to be a ball game. And by God, it was. They could not find anything to get going in the second half. I don't think that they had but 4 or 5 first downs in the second half. I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me. I didn't go look that up and take notes on that. That's just off my memory.
Right.
That's just off my memory. 4 or 5 first downs in the second half. They couldn't do anything, and Texas A&M could do no wrong offensively. Scored damn near every time they touched the ball in the second half. Thought Texas A&M tried to get a little cute down there in the red zone with the halfback pass or the halfback throwing the pass to Marcel Reed that threw it backwards. He missed it, and it ended up being a fumble. And really, that allowed South Carolina to still have a chance there at the end. I just thought that was they got a little too cute. It's like, man, you're better than them. You've been playing better than them. Just run it down their throat. Do something. Go upfield. Don't try to do anything trick play type. But in the first half, man, South Carolina could do no wrong, and in the second half, Texas A&M could do no wrong. The absolute collapse of the century that I've ever seen. Tale of two halves. Can't believe Shane Beamer's still employed, honestly. Going from a playoff contending team last year, you had high expectations this year. Have a quarterback that myself and a lot of people were expecting to be in the Heisman talk and potentially win the Heisman. And you have a season like you're having this year. You got the number one team on the ropes, on the road, and you find a way to blow a 27-point lead. Going into halftime, Shane Beamer's pumping up the crowd. I get it. You want them to be pumped up. But he acted like he was walking off the field after the fourth quarter, after the final whistle blew. I was sitting there watching the game, and I said audibly, brother, you got a whole half to play. Calm down. He was acting like he had just won the SEC championship. I mean, going nuts. Then he's got the nerve to say not a soul in that locker room thought the game was over at halftime. Brother, you did. We all saw you. I could not believe. I love Shane Beamer. I'm a huge fan of Shane Beamer. I could not believe the way he was acting going into the locker room. That is not how championship caliber coaches act at all, especially after a game, sure. But during halftime, I could not believe that. It was, honestly, I was laughing. I was sitting there on the couch, and I just started laughing in the second half. I think A&M scored 4 touchdowns in a row or whatever it was at a halftime. I mean, it was Marcel Reed hits God deep in the end zone. Now, you talk about Alabama had a chance to have an interception that could have flipped the game. South Carolina dropped like 4 interceptions in the first half. Now, they had a couple in the first half too, but they dropped several more. They had their chances to really put the game away, honestly, in the first half and absolutely end it in the first half, and they just couldn't find a way to get it done. Texas A&M shot themselves in the foot a couple times in the first half, missed some field goals. This was, like you texted me after the game. You said, "Man, that was the biggest tale of two halves I've ever seen," and that's the best way you can put it. Honestly, that's the best way you can put it.
And like you said, they needed anything in the second half. Honestly, a couple decent drives may have been enough. You know what I mean? Like literally, just like get 3 or 4 first downs.
I thought they didn't run don't enough just either.
I mean, it was unbelievable. Who would have thought them holding A&M holding South Carolina to a field goal right before half rather than a touchdown? How big of a deal that ended up being? Because they had it first and goal at the 9 right before half. Obviously, A&M ends up holding them to a field goal, and it's 30-3 rather than 34-3 at half. It very easily could have been 34-3, and there were some other things where technically it could have been worse than that. But when A&M came right out and scored, and they got a stop, I don't know if it was me. I just, as soon as that happened, I was like, A&M's going to find a way to win this game. Like, it was unbelievable how quick they flipped the momentum. It was still a 20-point game, and it felt like a 7-point game already. Yeah, like it was a very weird feeling for me. I didn't have much in my account because I already had all of it pending pretty much for the day. But all I had left was like $15. As soon as they scored, make it 30-10, South Carolina had a couple plays going, but it looked like they were probably going to punt. I banged it. A&M plus 12.5 live bet it. Dude, I wish I would have had like $70-80 in there left because it was the most obvious. Like, oh yeah, at worst case, A&M's going to make it close. Like they're going to come right down to the end, and man, they did. It was crazy, like you said. South Carolina did nothing in the second half. I mean, it was touchdown, turnover on downs. They had 8 plays, so what they got 2 first downs. 7 plays, 70 yards for A&M, 3 and out, then touchdown for A&M, 4 plays and a punt. I mean, then 10-play drive for A&M, 3 and out. Like, I mean, it was just so quick. A&M would score, and then they'd hand it within a minute and a half. It was right back in A&M's hands. It was amazing how quick they were able to flip that momentum. Yes. But yeah, like you said, nothing much more I can add other than the biggest tale of two halves you've ever seen in your life. And I said too, if you lost a turnover margin by 3, you lost this weekend. Unless you're Texas A&M, because they lost it 4-1 and was able to pull off a comeback we haven't seen in a long, long time. I heard a stat, teams were 0-267 or 268, something like that, since 2004. Well, they're now 1-268 if you were down more than 27 points. So, yeah, really an unprecedented comeback that we hadn't seen in a long time. And, just an unbelievable game and unbelievable second half by A&M. It could not have been more inverted on itself than that game was.
The last thing I'll say about this, I thought South Carolina and Shane Beamer didn't utilize the clock enough up 27. I thought that they were running a little quick. I get maybe first drive, they just answered. First drive, you're trying to go get some points back. I get it, okay. But after that, I felt like they did not utilize the clock near enough. South Carolina had 41 plays. They ran 41 offensive plays in the first half. They ran 26 offensive plays in the second half. That is embarrassing. 41 plays in the first half, and you come out of halftime and you only are able to get the ball for 26 snaps. I thought that tells all you need to know. That they could not sustain a single drive. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drives in the second half I don't know that one of them crossed the midfield. Maybe one of them did. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. But like you said, tale of two halves. We'll move on from that game. That A&M did what championship teams do there. They haven't played great quality teams in the SEC. Haven't really played any of the top tier teams in the SEC. I don't think that means too much. This team is damn good. They can compete with anybody in the SEC. They can compete with anybody in the country. Now, moving on to Florida and Ole Miss. This game, the scoreboard does not dictate how not close this game really was. Ole Miss, a lot like Arkansas, they got in their way a little bit. Had 2 times on 4th and goal where Chambliss throws the ball on a little screen at his receiver's feet, which would have been a wide open touchdown. He would have waltzed in. Had another 4th and goal where he threw it to the back of the end zone. So 2 4th and goal tries from the 1 yard line or the 1 inch line really come away with 0 points. They had a touchdown taken off the board right there before half. They had to settle for a field goal because they had an illegal man downfield. So they had a chance to really blow this game open and win by 3 or 4 touchdowns, but they just couldn't get out of their own way at times. Florida's second half drive chart, I'm about to read it off to you. 4 plays, punt. 3 and out, interception, turnover on down in 4 plays, turnover on down in 4 plays. Their interception was a 10-play drive that ended in an interception, but outside of that, they never ran more than 4 plays in a drive in the second half. So Ole Miss came out and they dominated the second half, didn't allow Florida to score another point, kind of a lot like A&M did. But this should have been a much, much larger victory for Ole Miss. Like I said, they had their opportunities and they just weren't really gelling there, especially in the first half. That they kind of got in their own way at times. Like I said, down there at the fourth and goal, the screen pass that Chambliss threw at the feet of his receiver, I thought, like, that's the biggest head scratcher in the world because he's waltzing it. You could have underhanded it to him, and he threw it at his feet. I thought right then, because then Florida was still up 24-20 right then. I was like, okay, Florida may have a chance to really make this interesting, especially when Florida – early in the game, Florida has back-to-back touchdowns, taking the 14-10 lead, and then Ole Miss follows it up with another touchdown and goes up 17-10. So when Florida was up 14-10 and with back-to-back touchdowns, I was like, okay, Florida may have a chance and can upset Ole Miss today. Ole Miss answers back, and I was like, all right, this is just going to be a slugfest. Florida ends up driving down, scoring the next drive, and then after that, they forced some turnovers. I think they were even on turnovers in this game. I think each team had one, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check that. Yeah, each team had one interception in this game. I will say, the last drive of the game for Florida, atrocious no PI call. They throw the flag for PI, and then they wave it off. Clear as day, the Ole Miss DB puts a shoulder into Jaden Ball 2 seconds before the ball gets there. They throw the PI call, which would have given them a free 15. They were in their own end zone, or they were in Ole Miss's end zone. That would have given them a free 15, and they waved the flag off. I thought that was abysmal. And then Ole Miss is able to stack up and get their first sack of the game when it mattered most. Sacks them there on 3rd down and ends up, making them try for it on 4th down, and they got to stop, and they end up winning the game. But clearly Ole Miss was the better team by far. Like I said, they shot themselves in the foot a couple times. It could have been a much larger margin of victory, but you got to tip your hat to Florida and Lagway. Man, they came out there taking shots. They hit 2 big shots in the pass game. I think Lagway's going to be fine, especially if Lane ends up going there. Lagway's going to be really good. But I want to get your thoughts on this, and if you thought the same thing I did. Watching the game, the scoreboard said it was pretty close, and even when Florida was leading, you could just tell, like, Ole Miss was the better team on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, they doubled them up. First downs, time of possession was big in the favor of Ole Miss. 3rd and 4th downs, Florida was 6 of 13. Ole Miss was 6 of 16 on 3rd downs. Ole Miss was 5 of 7 on 4th downs. Total yardage was a pretty big discrepancy, 538 yards for Ole Miss. Pretty subpar game from Trinidad Chambliss, but Keelan Lacey, man, he was really the star of the night, going over 200 on the ground, which you don't really see of that often, especially in the SEC. Like you said, I thought Ole Miss's defense really stepped up in the second half as well. And, this Florida team's still really talented. It's been a little Jekyll and Hyde lately of what Florida team we get, because against Georgia we got a really good version, and then completely Casper the Friendly Ghosted against Kentucky, and they come out this week and look like they did against Georgia again. So it's like we know they're capable of being competitive, but it's like you just don't know exactly what you're going to get. But yeah, they competed, fought really hard. They kept their turnovers down, which has been a big issue for them for a lot of this year. And in their losses, they've really piled up and thought they competed hard, though. But like I said, Ole Miss was just a better team, particularly in the second half, pitching a second half shutout. And then obviously they were able to double up in rushing yards as well. And I thought that was a big reason they were able to kind of put it away there. And like I said, Keelan Lacey having a really career day on the ground. Not sure what his career high was, but I got to imagine that was pretty close or probably better than it.
And in the final SEC on SEC matchup this week, Mississippi State takes on Mizzou. I took Mississippi State to cover. Thought this was going to be a really close game. Matt Zollers channeled his best J.J. McCarthy being a handoff specialist to Ahmad Hardy. Ahmad Hardy goes 12 yards a pop, 300 yards on the day. Missouri's defense, 2 pick sixes, force a fumble after they throw an interception. So Matt Zollers throws an interception. Mississippi State goes on like a 16, 17 play drive, marching it down the field, get inside the 10, and Missouri forces a turnover, and then they follow that up with a touchdown. Like I said, Blake Shapen throws 2 interceptions. Both of them go for 6 for Missouri. Missouri dominated this game. They were much better in all facets of the game, but defensively, this Missouri team, they made a statement this past Saturday. A lot of people are hating on Missouri. They haven't really won many big games under Drinkwitz when it comes to ranked opponents. But this game, not saying Mississippi State's some knockdown, drag-out team, but this Missouri defense, in my opinion, is defensive team of the week. Like I said, forced 3 turnovers. 2 of them went back for a touchdown. The fumble they recovered ended up turning into a touchdown the very next drive for Missouri. Missouri had one fumble, I think, and an interception, or maybe just the interception. But I thought that at the end of the day, hand the ball to Ahmad Hardy and let him work. 12 yards a pop on 20-something carries for 300 yards. Ridiculous. That dude is very, very good. He's going to be playing in the league for quite some time. But, this Missouri team just smothered Mississippi State. Mississippi State had no answer. Kind of close early, but then once the defensive turnovers happened, it was all she wrote for Missouri and Mississippi State.
Yeah, I got several wrong this weekend, but I definitely missed this one. I thought Mississippi State would have a chance to keep this one close. That wasn't the case. Like I said, Ahmad Hardy just dominated on the ground. He won up Keelan Lacey running for 300 on the ground on 25 carries. When you're getting 12 a pop, and if you take out their sacks, Missouri ran for 350 on the ground. So when you can do that and triple up your opponent in rushing yards, like I said, we're able to win the turnover battle too. Like I said, Matt Zollers was put in a great position to win a ball game this week. So yeah, I'm really impressed with this win for Missouri. Like I said, I know Mississippi State's not one of the better teams in the league or anything, but to put them away in the fashion they did was impressive. So yeah, I mean, obviously Missouri's a great team running the football, and they proved that even more than I think anybody expected. And I like the fact too they were trying to make sure Ahmad Hardy, got that 300 on the ground too, when it was out of reach. So like I said, that's such a rare feat. So that was cool to see. He's definitely one of the best backs in the country. But yeah, really big win for Missouri, and I definitely thought State could keep it a little closer, but just too many mistakes and not nearly good enough run defense to keep this one close in Columbia.
All right, moving on to Week 13 previews. Missouri's taking on Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a 7.5-point favorite, over under 42.5. I'm hammering the under this week. I know we just talked about Ahmad Hardy. I know we just went for 300. Teams don't run for 300 yards against Oklahoma's defense. This Oklahoma defense, you can get them through the air at times. Matt Zollers is not that guy to do that. They are not going to let you run the ball all over them. They just are not. I don't see a path of victory here for Missouri outside of defensive turnovers, kind of like you were talking about last week with Oklahoma and Alabama. I think Oklahoma's the better team. Offensively, though, they're not what they were the first few weeks. They're not what everybody expected them to be this year. I don't see many points happening in this game. I don't know that Oklahoma covers a 7.5. It may be a closer margin of victory, but I like the under 42.5. I don't see many points in this game, so I'm taking the under 42.5.
Yeah, I like. If I got to make a pick here, I think Missouri keeps this one close. Like I said, it is going to be tough sledding on the ground for sure, but too, it does concern me a little bit. Coming off such an emotional win, too, on the road, having to come right back, get focused against another ranked opponent, even though it is in Norman. I think Oklahoma wins this game, but I think Missouri can keep it close. The line's at 7.5. I think that's about right. I think Missouri can maybe keep it a tad closer than that. But I'm like you. I do like the under here. I think it's going to be a defensive ball game. Both these defenses can get after the quarterback, so I think that's going to tend it to be a little bit lower scoring game. Now, if we have a turnover fest and both teams have a couple turnovers, that could lead to a little bit higher scoring game if there's some short fields involved. But I'm like you. I think a lower scoring, but I'm gonna lean OU to get this one. I think they got the playoffs in their sights. I think they're going to close the deal and get in that 12-team playoff. Tough game, but I like OU to win, Missouri cover.
All right, Kentucky's coming down here to my neck of the woods, going to Nashville, taking on Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a 9.5-point favorite, over-under set at 53.5. Okay. Several teams, especially in the SEC, they play Kentucky, they kind of play with their food a little bit. You look at Auburn this year. You look at Florida and what they did with Kentucky. Even though Florida's not that good of a team, they did not have their best effort that year. You look last year with Georgia and Kentucky. Teams tend to play with their food a little bit against Kentucky. Vanderbilt is not one of those teams that does that. I think Vanderbilt wins this game. I know that Kentucky's Cutter Boley, they've kind of found their stride a little bit. Their offense is starting to get a little better. Their defense is always hard-nosed and tough. But I like Vandy to cover this -9.5. I think Vandy wins this game pretty easy. I like the over as well. I think Cutter Boley is going to get the offense and march them down the field and be able to score points. I just don't know that they're going to be able to stop Vanderbilt at many times. I like the over 53.5, and I like Vanderbilt to cover 9.5. I'm probably going to wait. I assume that the Vanderbilt line is probably going to go down to 7.5, 8.5, with people bringing money coming in later in the week. But I would take Vanderbilt -9.5 today if I needed to.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I think it helps a lot Vandy coming off a bye. It's late in the year. They're just outside of this 12-team playoff at the moment. I think they know it. I think they got to win these two games. I think they're going to be laser focused. I think they're going to be refreshed. And I think they know that they got to come out, definitely win, but if they can make a statement, that only helps their case that much more. I think they're going to be ultra focused, ultra motivated here. This game being in Nashville, I think they take care of business here, sets up a huge matchup with Tennessee during rivalry week. But like I said, if they take care of business, there's a good chance they could find themselves in this thing. So I'm like you. I'm taking Vandy here. I'd feel good up to 9.5. Like to get under 10 for sure, but if it came down a little bit more, I'd feel even better about that. But like I said, I think they're going to be refreshed coming off a bye and laser focused, knowing what they need to take care of these last 2 weeks to hopefully get themselves in it and try to, ultimately keep it out of the committee's hands. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be borderline, kind of how this is playing out right now. But, yeah, give me Vandy to take care of business this week as well.
All right, Arkansas is traveling to Texas, taking on the Longhorns. Texas is an 8.5-point favorite, over-under set at 57.5. I like the under in this game, and I also like Texas to cover 8.5. Not necessarily just because I think Texas is just that dominant on offense anyway. I just don't think that Arkansas is – I know that we praise Arkansas's offense all the time, but what I just saw against LSU's defense this past week, they're turnover prone always. Texas is going to force some turnovers. Texas is going to get to the quarterback. I don't see Arkansas being able to consistently piece drives together. Arkansas's defense is Swiss cheese. Texas is going to find a way to move the ball. I like the under 57.5 here. I like Texas to cover 8.5. I think Texas wins this game somewhere in the ballpark of 35-10, 28-0, something along those lines. I think Texas handles this game with pretty much ease. I think Texas wins big. I don't think Arkansas is going to have an answer for them on either side of the football.
Yeah, I kind of wonder the mindset of both teams coming in this game. I'm really curious to see how Texas comes out. I don't think there's any reason why they shouldn't handle business. I just know, obviously, that was such a big game last week coming off a bye week, and for that fourth quarter to go so off the rails and you kind of end up getting your ass kicked at the end of it, it's like, man, we're in this game, and then bam, we're out of it, and we just kind of got embarrassed a little bit. You're a 3-loss team. You've got A&M looming next week. Obviously, it's going to be a huge game and try to kind of ruin their hopes a little bit, not necessarily knock them out of the playoffs, but, potentially ruin an undefeated season for them. So I'm just curious about their mindset. I think if they come out ready to play like they should, I think they should cover that line. This Arkansas team is scrappy. I mean, we have seen how many one possession losses. So I definitely think Texas should win this big. But for those reasons, I think Texas wins. I'll say Arkansas covers. It's came down a little bit. I liked it at 10. It was at 10.5, I believe, opening. So it's down to 8.5. A little Arkansas money's come in. So I'll go Arkansas to cover just because they've pretty much done that with everybody. But I think, like I said, if Texas plays to the level they should, I do believe they should cover this. I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see how they come out in this game.
All right. Tennessee's traveling to Florida, going into Ben Hill Griffith. Tennessee's a 3.5-point favorite. Over-under's also set at 57.5. I'm staying away from the total because I really don't know what to expect. But I think Tennessee, they're just better. Defensively, both these teams are kind of similar. Florida hasn't really been great defensively since the first few weeks of the season. They haven't been bad or anything, but they just haven't been great. This Tennessee team finds a way to score points. They found a way to move the ball against Oklahoma. Oklahoma forced turnovers. They're prone to throw some interceptions now. I mean, Lagway's had multiple 4+ interception games this year. Not that Tennessee's defense is anything great by any means, but I think Tennessee finds a way to get it done. I don't think Florida's going to have an answer for them defensively. I think Tennessee wins this game. I think Tennessee covers. Staying away from the total, but I think Tennessee covers 3.5.
Yeah, I think Tennessee should win this game as well. Now, as I said earlier, you never know what Florida you're going to get. If we get the Florida against Georgia or, kind of against Ole Miss last week, a team that's limiting their turnovers a little bit, obviously that's going to give them a shot in this game. I just think the scheduling spot is definitely in big favor of Tennessee here. Now, Florida's played 3 straight weeks coming off a bye. Tennessee had their bye. They played last week, this past Saturday, against New Mexico State. Then they had a bye the week prior to that. Mm-hmm. So, to me, Tennessee definitely should be the fresher team in this game to kind of line up for these final two, this final sprint to the end of the regular season. So, like I said, scheduling spot-wise, it is in Gainesville, but it should favor Tennessee in this matchup. So, I think for that reason, I'm going with Tennessee here, so I'll take them to win and cover as well. But like I said, if we get the version of Florida that we have gotten that maybe's limiting turnovers a little bit, then that's obviously going to give them a much better shot. But like I said, we've kind of been getting, every other week with them, so maybe that doesn't line up very well in that case. But I'll take Tennessee to win here and cover. I think they want to finish it strong and got a big one against Vandy next week to potentially, and rivalry week to potentially, run their playoff hopes. So I think Tennessee wants to finish it strong here and get to, 8 or 9 wins.
Absolutely. Got anything else you want to cover?
Really just want to appreciate everyone for tuning in. Just be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate that a lot. Helps us out. Same thing on TikTok as well. You can find us on Twitter at Saturdays_SEC. We'll be posting a lot of clips from this podcast in particular, some shorts, and then as well on TikTok, as I mentioned. So really just appreciate everyone for tuning in. It's going to be a very exciting final stretch here of the regular season. Conference title races, playoff races, coaching searches. Like I said, with the Lane Kiffin news, should know something on that sooner rather than later. So just appreciate all your support, and looking forward to being back next week.
Thank you, guys.